Hi, in this session, we are going to look at one of the important, very famous question which a lot of fresher students keep asking: Why do we have so many programming languages? Do we really want so many programming languages? Actually, the answer is no. We do not want so many languages to learn just for the purpose of, for the sake of writing code. In fact, in an ideal world where everything is perfect, we might just have one programming language that would do analysis, perform calculations, develop user interface experience, and some sort of performance and accessibility issues also. But we are not living in the ideal world, right? So we need many programming languages where each programming language serves one or two purpose. So, or I mean, one of these activities at its best. So that means each programming language has some purpose, and based on that, they keep developing the new languages, whatever they wanted. Now, if you look at the list of all programming language, there are hundreds of programming languages. Few of them are successful. That means few of them are popular, and a few of them are not so popular. The main purpose of any programming language is ultimately to talk to the computer resources, right? So to perform some action. The underlying fact is that all of these programming languages serves the same purpose: to turn the human beings' thoughts into zeros and ones that a computer can understand. But so having said that, every language is doing the same thing. It is trying to convert the instructions what people are thinking about to the computer, which it can understand. So ultimately, there are so many languages where the purpose of every language is same, but depends on the operations that we are performing. Each programming language converts the same stuff into mission language, whether it performs that actions easily or it is very difficult to go with that. Depends on that, people do select the programming languages. Just to get little more overview on that, so indirectly what I'm saying is we have so many languages. If you look at vehicles, just to try understand little better, you take any industry, whether it is automobile industry or construction industry or any industry, over a period of time there would be a lot of evolution in a lot of aspects, right? For example, if vehicles, we have a lot of vehicles. We have trucks, we have cars, we have bicycles, we have bikes, and there is a purpose for every vehicle, whether it is two-wheeler, three-wheeler or four-wheeler. So now, just to get a glimpse of what we are going to discuss, just take a look at this one. So you can see this, right? If you have a vehicle, if you overload any stuff, anything which cannot bear. Similarly here, if you are not using the vehicle for the purpose it was designed for, it might fail. So that means there is a purpose for every programming language, and those actions, whatever it is intended for, it performs those operations effectively or efficiently. And if you are using those programming languages for different purpose, it might be very difficult for us to go with that, or over a period of time it might not able to handle the data that we are looking for. Okay, so as I said, every programming language has the same purpose. So we are going to convert the high level instructions into the hardware, that is called mission language, because because computers can understand only zeros and ones, right? So whatever, whether we write in C, C++, Pascal, Haskell, Python or any language, it has to be ultimately converted to a mission language. And generally, at the beginning of computers, only professors and scientists used to work with the computers, and where they feed the zeros and ones directly to the system and they used to see the results. That was very difficult for them to go with that, right? Now, later on, according to John von Neumann concepts, that's what we call it as stored program concept. He said, why to give the live data to the system to see the results? So he said, we can store the instructions or whatever the data that we are feeding to the computer in a file or what we call it as executable, and load it to the memo system. It will execute one by one by to looking at those instructions. That's what we are calling it as stored program concept. According to that, we need CPU, main memory, and secondary memory. So whatever we are going to execute, we are trying to put them in the main memory, and it looks at the instructions in the main memory and it keeps executing. The execution will be done by the CPU, central processing unit, right? Now, what are the instructions that we are putting in the main memory? That will be looked by the central processing unit, CPU, and it tries to convert the high level language to the machine language, and ultimately that machine language will talk to the hardware and performs the actions. So slowly, actually, during the process of evolution of the programming languages, professors and scientists came up with different variants of these conversion process, what we call them as programming languages. So instead of working directly with zeros and ones, they came up with assembly language, which will ease the process of talking to the hardware. And slowly, a lot of people started working with these computers. Right? Any field, if a lot of people are working on that, ultimately it will become little easy, and also it will become user friendly, and a lot of things will come into the picture. Over a period of time, slowly a lot of programming languages came into picture, and ultimately a lot of people like that, and they also started contributing that. That's how we are seeing so many languages now. Now if you just see that, now let us just to understand little better, let us assume your grandfather or your parent might have constructed a house, let us say 25 years back. Now you want to construct one more house. What you do? Generally, we look at the problems that we are facing in the current house, which was constructed some time back, and we try to add new features to that house, and at the same time we fix the issues whatever the old house has. That's what actually very much applicable for any field, even in the programming languages. So we have the initially assembly language, which is a combination of zeros and ones. Then people started coming up with other languages like C, C++, Java, Ruby, Python, and recently Kotlin and other languages. So the people keep developing new stuff for a specific purpose. So while developing new language, they will have some feature list in their mind, and they keep developing the stuff. And if that is robust enough, so that where many people can work on it, or if they can improve it, it will survive. Otherwise, it will slowly actually disappear from the evolution of the programming language. So we are seeing very limited programming languages because they are very good for at least for some specific operations. But there are hundreds of languages which were not so popular. Indirectly, I mean to say that they were not user friendly, or they are not good for supporting features. They are not easy to read. They are not easy to write. They are not easy to understand, or it is difficult to write maybe syntax wise. So maybe because of a lot of factors, few languages disappear, and we are still seeing a lot of good languages like C language, which was invented a long time back. Similarly, COBOL and other. So that's what actually we need to understand. So what I'm saying is, so all the programming languages are same. We consider the purpose of what they are serving for, whether it is C, C++, Java, Python, or any other programming language. They all have the same objective of making the user experience better. It is not just about creating websites or sending text or emojis on social network, but what happens at the back end that enables you to send those text and socialize is equally important. Ultimately, what I'm saying is, in a sense that we have different languages, like especially Ruby, Java, Python, C#, Go language, or Go JavaScript. We generally use them for creating websites, and similarly we use C, C++ for performance or standalone applications, and Haskell as a functional programming language, COBOL or Pascal or Perl language, scripting language, right? So underlying fact is that all of the programming language serves the same purpose, and it tries to convert the human thoughts into zeros and ones. That is what the computer can understand, right? So since all the programming languages are doing the same stuff, but ultimately what I'm saying in the final note is there is a different purpose for every programming language. For example, as I said, like different tools are for different jobs. For programming language, or we can treat the programming language or tools, and we choose these different tools for different jobs. For example, in the vehicles, we use tractor and bicycles, and they all have the wheels, steering, and generally we use them for going from one place to other place, right? But we use tractors for different purpose. We use bicycles for different purpose. We use bikes for one different purpose. We have airplanes for different purpose. Similarly with the programming language, so generally we use Ruby and JavaScript are for building the website, and Java and C++ are often used for financials and standalone applications. Python and R are used for analyzing the data, like especially for the statistics and data science. So there is a trade-off in terms of convenience, speed, and safety-wise in terms of writing the code. Very much similar to the vehicles. Okay, and also it is not that people decide okay to use C++, Java, or based on, depends on people taste also doesn't matter here. For example, maybe actually some company is coming up with some project where their developers are comfortable with Java or C#. So depends on their knowledge level also, or their comfort level, they generally select the language. So unless that language does not support those features, generally they don't change, right? So that's the human tendency. So people taste also does matter, whether it is easy for them to write the code, or instead of spending a lot of time in learning the language, which takes a lot of time for them to go with. So that's why. So there is a purpose for every programming language, and the selection of the programming language is does decided by the people they are using and the kind of work they are doing, and also the feature list whatever they wanted to support. Now with this background, you might have understood that these programming languages have specific purpose. So every language they have specific feature list, and depends on the feature list we select which language is suitable for our project. Now let us see the evolution of list of programming languages since 1950s. So just to start with, we can see that, right? So we have programming language since 1950s, which is the beginning of the computer era. So we all know that, right? Programming is an interesting activity which gives the results if you feed the instructions to the computers. So in 1950s and between 1950s and 60s, the assembly language was the major contribution to the industry, and the main long-lasting, these assembly languages and other languages they were there since long. So we can treat them as long-lasting languages over a period of maybe 50-60 years back. Still we are using them. So over this period, Fortran and COBOL are the one which laid the foundation for further development of the programming language. So assembly language holds the major role in evolution of the programming languages, and we are still using them, especially the COBOL, which came in 1959. We are using, right, in mainframe especially. So these are the major programming languages which are still available and used by the industry. Now when it comes to next decade, that is from 1961 to 70s, so in between a lot of other languages also came, like let us say Algo 250, Algo 256, so many languages, but we are not looking at everything. Whichever are popular, which were accepted by the industry, at least to some extent, only those languages. So most of the most important language which came out during 1960s and 70s is COBOL, which is a successor of COBOL. And Simula is another language. It was developed by, it is kind of a object-oriented programming language. And by the end of this decade, the major important programming language which came out is the Pascal, which was initially aimed for teaching purposes. When I was in college in around 2005 and 6, we used to have one language called Pascal as a laboratory course. But these days people have removed that Pascal language and replaced with C, C++, Java and Python, and depends on the university curriculum. But that was also very famous language. A special thing about is when these new languages we are having zero as the, for example, I'm just seeing some differences. In C, C++, Java, we have the, for arrays, the starting index is 0, but in the case of Pascal, the starting index is 1. Okay, and so the another important thing is so in the during the every decade has some specific set of new languages. That's what we need to keep in mind. And while developing the new language, they try to use the language of other whatever were already developed, and they try to add new features. And now when it comes to the next decade from 71 to 80s, so this is the very important decade for the programming language. We have C, C++, both of them, and along with SQL and others. So you all know, right, the power of C and C++, which we are using for many projects since beginning. Even all the freshers, graduates, bachelors, and everybody is using C, C++ because it is performance oriented language, and also it is little easy to write the code, not the complicated code. At least everybody can understand the basic fundamentals of programming with C, C++. So this decade has introduced the C language, which is still being used to develop programs specific to the hardware. So if you want to develop any hardware projects, generally people go with C, C++. And also SQL is also developed actually during the same period, that is in 1978. Especially this was designed to work with data actually. So if you have data, how to work with the data. And this decade C++ also released actually on top of C to add to work with data, which is object-oriented concept. So the purpose of actually C++ and SQL is same, but the different way of manipulating the data. So now when it comes to the next decade, so next decade languages, the main important language in the next decade is especially the MATLAB, which people are using very heavily recently in the data science and analytics project. So MATLAB, FoxPro, Objective-C evaluated as major programming language during this decade, where MATLAB is mainly used for algorithms and visualizations in the data science and analytics. Okay, so Objective-C is another object-oriented programming language, because you know, right, in the previous decade we have developed C++, which is object-oriented language. On top of that, actually Objective-C was developed by Apple for OS X actually, and iOS development. So which is object-oriented language. So once the people started using object-oriented language, a lot of people came up with object-oriented programming languages. So these are the important things. Similarly, in 1990s, there are other languages like Perl scripting, Haskell also came. Especially the Haskell language is a functional language where we write the minimal mathematical kind of syntax to perform the actions. And it is not so popular because only it is being used mainly for the research oriented works. And the next decade is very important decade in terms of the programming languages. So we have a lot of new languages which are recently being used by a lot of projects, especially in the data science analytics and a lot of places, especially the Python or Java also came in the same period, JavaScript. So many, actually so much of languages came into picture during this decade. So very interesting language, Python, which is being used. You can treat it Python as an alternative of PHP and Java. In the mid of this decade, Java was released, and Ruby is the another language which was also introduced in 1995. And it has one special framework, what we call them as Rails framework. It is mainly used for website developments and application development. And similarly, the same year, a lot of PHP also came into picture, JavaScript, Actions, which are also emerged as front-end languages. That means if you people who are working with the websites and web programming, they generally web development, they can generally go for JavaScript and ActionScript, which are majorly just to display the pop-ups and other stuff, right, which we are already seeing every day on many websites. And in 2001 and 2010, during of this period, a lot of other languages also came into picture. One of the major languages is C Sharp, which was developed by Microsoft, and in 2009, Go language came into picture. So C Sharp was, as you know, that since it is by Microsoft, and they combine the features of other languages. So especially they try to add the features of Java and C++ into the C Sharp just to make it more robust in terms of for the web development and desktop application developments. So that was the initial intention of C Sharp. So again, C Sharp is very much similar to Java because it is having the features of C++ and Java. The syntax also very much similar. And Go and Rust languages also came in the same decade. And this Go language is majorly used for microservices. So people who are into microservices, especially the Docker containers, Docker container orchestration, people are using that. And but generally the Rust language is a little bit difficult to understand, whereas Go language is easy to understand or learn. And the current decade from 2011, actually we have got a new languages Swift and Kotlin, which were also doing so good. Kotlin has emerged as the major alternative to Java since Java was overtaken by Oracle. Kotlin is being widely used for Android development with its easy syntax compared to Java. So Swift is another important language introduced by Apple as an alternate. Initially we have seen, right, Object-C was developed by Apple, and Swift also developed by Apple just by making small changes to that. So Swift is easier to learn compared to Object-C. Now actually that means indirectly saying that it needs less code to be written. Hence these days it is also becoming very popular for many of the projects, especially for developing iOS applications. Now as a final word, just let us take a look at this image which being sourced from others. We can see that, right, these are all the object oriented languages. You can see that, right. So while developing the Python, they have added the features of C++ with a different way of syntaxing. And similarly, Java is developed from C++ by adding extra features. Scala came from Java, and C Sharp also came. That's ultimately what I'm saying is every programming language which came recently has the features of old languages. That means all the good features of old languages. On top of that, they will add few more features to support the current ongoing activities. Indirectly saying that to add the libraries. So new language, they add new features or libraries to support the current ongoing technologies and projects. So now the final say about this programming language is, we have a lot of programming languages. We don't have to learn all the programming languages. And which language to select for the project depends on the feature list. So it depends on what kind of features that we want to support. We have to select the programming language. And if you are comfortable with one or two languages, that is enough. Nobody expects to learn every language which is coming. And also it is not possible, right? These days, if you look back 20-30 years back, if somebody learned C++, they could survive for 10-20 years in the industry. But these days, a lot of new languages, at least every few months or year. It is difficult to stick with any programming language and continue with that programming language throughout your career. So you should get the motivation to learn any language with the knowledge that you have with other programming language. So just keep in mind that one language cannot serve all the purpose, and depends on the kind of work that we are doing. We have to select the programming language and treat the programming language just as a tool. It is just about the syntax, right? If you know what needs to be done, it is just a matter of filling the blanks with the programming language syntax. So don't stick to any programming language so much. It will create burden for you to learn the new language. Okay, so just keep this in mind and go with any programming language which are popular in the recent. For example, This year in 2019, for Python is being picked up by a lot of projects. So see what is being actually used by a lot of industry, I mean industry gains, and you learn that one or two languages. That is enough.